Everybody, it is Wednesday. It is 10 o'clock. It's time for 10 with Tim. My name is Tim Harris. I'm pastor at Woodburn Baptist Church. Thank you so much for being with me. Some of you are live right now on Facebook or YouTube, and good to see you. Good morning to you. Others of you, it's later. It's the weekend. You're binge watching a bunch of these in a row. That's fine with me. I don't care. As long as you're in the Word, as long as you put your heart and your mind, your best thoughts into meditating on the Word of God. That's all that matters to me. But I will guide you the best as I can as I meditate on the Lord's Word with you. In Matthew chapter 5, verses 27 to 37, that's where we are today, going verse by verse through the Gospel of Matthew. We're in the section of the Sermon on the Mount that I said I'd call it the six antitheses. It's where Jesus says, you've heard this, but I say. So an antithesis is when you put one thing up against something else. And so what Jesus is doing is asserting his own authoritative interpretation of Old Testament law. So we start out with yesterday the first antithesis, which was about murder. Thou shalt not murder. Today we'll pick up with the second antithesis, and that is you've heard the commandment that says you must not commit adultery. What is that? The seventh commandment. So the first two deal with two of the 10 commandments, and this is the second one, thou shalt not commit adultery. Jesus says, but I say, even if you look at a woman with lust in your heart, then you've already committed adultery in your heart. Again, the pattern here is that Jesus is saying that sins of the heart, sins of the mind, these are still sin. It's not less than sin just because you didn't act on it. The thought is, father to the deed, right? And so you are guilty. That kind of sin is punishable. Do you see that? So I don't know, some are thinking, well, what's the big deal with lust? Like, is that not a victimless crime? If it's a crime at all, and besides, some of you like the idea that somebody might lust after you. I mean, that kind of describes, half of fashion. People sometimes do want to be thought of as sexy. I mean, you got girls with sexy written across the back of their jeans. I mean, so obviously for some people, this is considered kind of a victimless crime, kind of an okay thing. I mean, our whole culture is kind of built on lust. We want to be sexy. We think of others as sexy. It's our culture. It's everything you watch on television. But Jesus says it's sin. So why is it sin? Why is lust sin? You understand adultery, of course. That's the breaking of marriage vows, taking of somebody else's marriage partner. But just lust, thought sins. How is that sin? How does that hurt anybody? Well, it's a sin against the dignity of people that are committed, that are created in the very image of God. You know what I mean? In other words, lust, it reduces a person made in God's image to just a body that is there for me to gratify myself. You understand? I just not in any way honoring that person as a person. It is sort of a denial of the prerogative or the priorities of love, because love would require that I know you, that I honor you, that I respect you, that I observe proper boundaries between myself and yourself. But see, lust obliterates all of that. Lust just simply makes, a person an object that I would want to, possess sexually. And so in so many ways, it's a sin against the image of God in other people. It's a sin against other people because you're just simply reducing them to a body to be fantasized over or possessed for your own sexual gratification. Jesus says it's sin. Now, let's talk about this a second, though. In so much of the ancient world, and to this day in parts of the Middle East, women are often just seen as seductresses from a male perspective. So in male-dominated religions, you don't even look at women. That's why in Islam, for example, a woman is just simply covered head to toe. In the most extreme cultures, they wear a burqa. In other words, it's shameful for a woman even to be seen, because if a man looks at her, he's going to sin, right? Even to look at her creates the opportunity for lust. So women are cloaked and covered over, and men shouldn't even look at them. Now, that's very common and somewhat common even in Jesus's day. But notice how, because of the teachings of Jesus and because of the Christian tradition, that's not the way we operate. Women are not to be, secluded, draped over, invisible, or otherwise set aside as seductresses. Instead, they are welcomed into the community fully as sisters. And that's very different. Notice here, when Jesus has this teaching about lust, he's primarily speaking to men, although I know good and well women lust. I've seen the bold and the beautiful. I've seen the young and the restless. But here, notice how Jesus puts this emphasis on the men. He doesn't say, lust is a sin, therefore all you women need to cover up. You don't need to dress like a hussy. No short skirts, no halter top. No, Jesus doesn't blame the woman for the man's lust. Instead, Jesus puts the responsibility on the man. It is a sin to look lustfully upon a woman. The sin is on the man. You understand? And so the obligation here is for all of us, men, women too, but all of us, to control ourselves, to use a particular kind of discipline so that you don't always just walk around lusting in your mind, in your heart after people. Do you see that? So Jesus here doesn't just, blame the women at all. Women are welcomed into Christian community as sisters. And we're all called upon, but by the Holy Spirit to use a kind of self-discipline so that we aren't guilty of sexual thought sins. Does that make sense? I think it's pretty important. The third antithesis here is found in verse 31. It's about divorce. We'll come back to this because in the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus will come back to it. But I just want to point out here that when it talks about, a man, you've heard it said that a man can divorce his wife for, nearly any reason. Just, give her a certificate of divorce. Jesus says, but I say, unless she's been unfaithful, so many people use this just as a way to, to punish and shame and beat up on divorced people. But that's not what Jesus is doing here. Do you see that? What Jesus is doing here is trying to create a compassionate religious system for women, particularly pertaining to the institution of marriage. You can't just divorce a woman for any reason. The Jewish rabbis in Jesus' day were very lax when it came to divorce permissiveness. They literally would allow a man to divorce his wife if she was a bad cook, if she burned breakfast. True story. If she burned breakfast, if she was a bad cook, they could just throw her out. The problem is, in this culture, a woman who was not attached to a man, a woman that wasn't married, had no options. I mean, she can't just go out and get a job, at Target, y'all. I mean, she can't just go to Waffle House and wait tables. That's not how the culture works. A woman who was put out in that way would be destitute. It would be a dreadful kind of abandonment. And so what Jesus is doing here is trying to redraw the permissiveness of divorce in such a way where women are protected. We'll come back to that, but don't miss that. Jesus isn't at this point trying to clobber divorce people. He's trying to create a compassionate system of marriage that's going to be good for women. And I think that's important. Finally, teaching about vows. Again, this is the fourth antithesis. You've heard it said, you must not break your vows. But I say, hey, don't even be, swearing. Now, what's Jesus talking about here? Talking about the kind of thing where people say, I swear on the lives of my children. I swear on them. I swear on my life. I swear to God. I swear on the Bible. Jesus is saying, don't be swearing on nothing. Tell the truth. Let your word be your word. And if your word's not enough, it don't matter what you swear. You don't just swear on a stack of Bibles. But if you're a liar, you're still a liar. Let your yes be yes. Let your no be no. You don't have to add anything to it, because if it's not the truth, then there's nothing you can add to it to make it the truth. And if you're telling the truth, it doesn't need anything else. You don't have to swear to God or swear on the lives of your children. I mean, come on. Tell the truth. If it's not the truth, then cut out the swearing. Just be a liar and at least be an honest one. You understand? Jesus is saying here, let your yes be yes. Let your no be no. Let your word truthfully be your word, and then you don't have to add anything to it. We'll pick up there tomorrow, chapter 5, verses 38 to 48. It's a beautiful Wednesday. It's going to be hot as everything, and y'all know I love that, man. I love summer. I'm preaching tonight at Greenwood Park Church of Christ at 6:30. So if you're in Bowling Green tonight, or if you're part of that great church family, I will see you later tonight. I love you guys so much. I love Kenneth Grizel, your preaching pastor, and I'm delighted to be with you all tonight. So I'll see you tonight, Greenwood Park Church of Christ, Woodburn Baptist. I love you with my whole heart, and all the rest of you. I'll see you in the morning, 10 o'clock for 10 with